I think we'll carry on. Oh, I got to start again.
Too fast.
We'll bring this committee of the whole meeting to order. Bit of a meeting today with Enbridge. I'm hoping some of the other councillors will come. They were invited. It's designed as a committee of the whole meeting, but without quorum, we can't carry it off as a committee of the whole meeting. But we can still, I think we can still have a discussion. We can still record it. I guess we can still have lunch. We just can't make any decisions or make any recommendations to council. So we are on the traditional territory of the Dene, the Cree, and the Dene people. We also recognize the enduring presence of the Métis people, as well as the Cascadene who live in our extreme north. So quite a few indigenous cultures, I guess, in the Northern Rockies. And so we're appreciative of them being here and being our friends. So welcome. We are doing a videotape, even though we don't have quorum today, just so that the information can get through. It's not a meeting, so we don't need to do a waiver of notice because we don't have a quorum. So I think we'll just move straight in to the meeting. Jessica, I'll hand it over to you. Welcome, and Jason and Jen are here as well, and so I'm interested to hear. I think we're interested to hear in what you got for us today. So welcome.
We did provide a few handouts as well, so it's kind of like a guide on our presentation today. So you can take notes if needed, and there's a couple of fact sheets there as well. And then at the very end, we also have a full list of our British Columbia Community and Indigenous Engagement team. So that's there for your reference. I don't know, did you want to start with introductions?
Sure, okay. That will work.
Okay.
So do you want to introduce your group, and our group will introduce themselves?
Sure, great, sounds good. So my name is Jessica Rose. I'm with Enbridge's Community and Indigenous Relations. I'm based out of our Fort St. John office. And we have a pretty robust team actually based out of Fort St. John. Pass it to Jason.
Yeah, Jason Rowley. So I've been with Enbridge for since '99 and been in Fort Nelson from 2011 to 1999. So we see a lot of familiar faces, which is really nice to see. And I'm the supervisor for pipelines for our transmission north area. So it's for the extensive area from Fort Nelson down to south of Chetwynd. And yeah, excited to be here today.
My name is Jen Pocara, so I'm based at the Fort St. John office as well. I'm Community and Indigenous Engagement Advisor at Enbridge. Lived in Fort St. John my whole life. Hired on with Enbridge to work on our LNG projects, but also I've been supporting the team on some of the operations work.
So I'm Ron Fraser, I'm the mayor. I've been elected in the last election here. You probably will have known me from before as the mayor of Taylor for 8 years, but happily moved and settling into my position here, and can't wait to the next 4 years. Councillor Dickey?
Councillor Leslie Dickey, and I was elected in October 2022. Longtime resident of Fort Nelson, but I'm actually from the traditional territory of the Quagilts in Port Hardy. Yeah.
Scott Barry, CAO with Northern Rockies.
Erin LaVale, Deputy CAO, Northern Rockies.
Jaylene McIver, Corporate Manager.
Jody Lee Seidel, Communications.
Do we have anyone online?
We don't have. We have Rada. Is her title? Planner.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, thank you for meeting with us today. At Enbridge, we typically we'll start out with a land acknowledgement as well. We acknowledge the local Indigenous lands where we live and work, including treaty, traditional territory, unceded, ceded, and Métis lands that our assets span on Turtle Island. And today we are in the traditional territory of the Dene, the Cree, the Denizah people of Fort Nelson and Prospect River First Nation.
We also start out with a bit of a safety moment as well. Safety is a priority for Enbridge. And so every single meeting that we have, we actually start it with a safety moment. And so today, one of the things Jennifer and I were thinking as we were driving up was you have this March sun now that's really beaming down, and it was a really sunny weekend in Fort St. John area as well. So a lot of people were ending up with sunburns on Sunday. That sun is just reflecting right off the snow and into your face. So maybe just a reminder, sunscreen season is all year round, but especially now that we have all that reflective snow on the ground and the hotter sun, it's something to take into consideration.
Goggles when you're skiing.
Yeah. You don't want to get a sunglass tan.
So next, on this next slide, there's a picture of our North America, our assets for Enbridge. So as you see, it's quite extensive. So really our assets are critical conduits for connecting people to the energy they need. So, you know, we'll break this down in the next few slides of the infrastructure that we have in North America. So in the next slide, we'll go through a bunch of stats here. There are quite a few stats here, but just high level, we have renewable power, natural gas utilities, gas transmission lines, liquids pipelines in our Enbridge company. We basically transport about 30% of crude oil produced in North America. We transport about 20% of natural gas consumed in the United States. Our renewable energy facilities, primary wind and solar projects, power more than 960,000 homes. So, and to break it down even further, for the liquids pipelines, we have one of the world's longest and most complex crude oil systems in North America. They generally, there's about 20,661 kilometers of crude oil lines in North America that we have, so quite a large number there. We deliver about 3 million barrels of crude oil and liquids a day in the Enbridge company. Kind of going over to the gas transmission, which is our BC pipeline system here, but overall in North America, like I mentioned earlier, it's 20% of all gas consumed in the US. We have about 123,189 kilometers of pipelines in North America. So really complex, one of the leading in the industry for the scope and the complexity of it, and the large. In 2021, we roughly had about 21 billion cubic feet of natural gas a day delivered on those 123,000 kilometers of pipelines. And just a side note there, for storage wise, we have roughly 161.7 billion cubic feet of working gas storage in our system as well in North America. So huge extent. So there's with just that 123,000. So huge numbers of gas and really leading the industry in that front. The distribution system as well. So we have some of our distribution centers. One in Ontario, which is about 75, feeds about 75% of the Ontario residents. So it's a huge system over there. And there's about 84,500 kilometers of distribution lines. There's some distribution mainlines as well, branch off of there, which is 67,000. So huge numbers. And you can see our map from those previous pages. It's just a busy, complex map, right? So, yeah, so our renewable powers, we really got into the renewable powers Enbridge did in 2002. And since then, we've committed about $8 billion in capital expenditure on the renewable powers. So it is something that we've put a lot of money into, and looking forward to the future of it as well, right? So some quick stats on that is basically from North America to Europe, we include 23 wind farms, 17 solar energy operations, 5 waste heat recovery facilities, a geothermal project, power transition project, hydroelectric facility. And with all those assets, we deliver about 2,175 milliwatts net of zero emissions energy. And like I mentioned earlier, it supplies about 967,000 homes with renewable power. So quite exciting ventures there that Enbridge is working on. Next slide is probably looks a little more familiar. It's our BC pipeline system. This really extends from Port Nelson all the way down to the US-Canada border, just or the Huntington Station, which is just south west of Chilliwack. And obviously we got about 2,953 kilometers of line along there. Primarily consists of 30 and 36-inch pipe that parallels each other. Some key areas is 42-inch pipe that loops around to give us some more capacity on our system. And in the Fort St. John area, we have some more line segments, one that goes over to the Alberta border, over by Gorndale, the 26-inch line. We have from the McMahon Taylor plant, we have some segments that flow down to the Chetwynd area as well and tie into our main line down there. So quite an extensive system, and really, you know, for 65 years, we've really been in this area and supplied residents, commercial, and industry with natural gas in this area, and been a real staple of the BC system going back to the West Coast Energy days and Spectra Energy days, and now into Enbridge, right? Next slide is the what we call the Enbridge Sustainable Goals. So our ESG, which really the ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. And we put a strong commitment into these goals. And to break them down a little bit farther, the environment piece, we've sort of committed to net zero emissions by 2050, reduce emissions intensity by 35% by 2030. And obviously safety is one of our priorities. So we're continuous improvement towards the goal of zero incidents. So we're continuing that as well. Under the social bucket here is 10% fewer employee contractor injuries at work from previous 3 years average. 6% people with disabilities included in our workforce by 2025. 28% of racial and ethical representation in the workforce by 2025. And a big one for us as well, and is the workforce comprised of 40% of women by 2025. And we have some pretty strong committees there that deal with that, and which I'm a part of, which is it's real fun to be a part of that. 7% of workforce representation of U.S. veterans by 2025. Increased procurement by diverse suppliers. We got some training as well that we focused on over the last few years and into this year as well, is unconscious bias and anti-racism training that all employees have to be completed, which was done in 2021. Indigenous awareness training as well, which was done by in 2022. And we look for more opportunities within the company to add more training into those programs. And not last on this also is a 3.5% representation with our workforce of Indigenous people by 2025. The governance portion here is sustained leadership, our leading ESG reporting standards. Representation on the board of 40% women, 20% racial and ethical groups by 2025. And this has been a big one as well. Advanced effective cyber defense programs. With some of the attacks that we've had in the past in the industry. So we've really stepped up our cyber programs. Next slide here is to break down our emission goals a little bit deeper here. So reduce emissions intensity by 35% by 2030 is something that we're taking very serious. You know, our Enbridge emissions intensity is down 27% since 2018. So we're really driving toward that 35% and over exceeding our targets there already. Net zero emissions by 2050. And that sort of goes hand in hand with our renewables and the strong focus that we're putting in the renewable portion of our business. We've got, like I mentioned earlier, investments in the European and offshore wind projects, a bunch of projects in North America. just recently announced was the arrival of the first commercial scale offshore wind project in France. And this one is trending to power an equivalent of about 400,000 homes over there in Europe. So some exciting stuff there that our company's working on in the renewable side things there. Next few slides here are really a little deeper dive into the operations and integrity that Enbridge has been working on. And so really we put a strong focus on our safety, our 24/7, 365 days a year within our company, on our systems, especially in BC here and really all over North America. But some of the things that we've really ramped up is our aerial patrols on our line segments, doing them more regularly. And really what we're looking for there is to make sure our assets are safe. There's no encroachments with increased industry traffic in the areas. Public awareness is a big part of that as well. So those are some of the stuff we're looking at. Some geohazard issues that we're dealing with. We run LiDAR systems that sort of looks at the ground movements in a lot of our areas where there's concerns. And it's really kicked off a real big focus on geohazards, which is we're working on in our areas. We'll get into some more detail later on in the presentation on those. But really just trying to be, having a good prevention system with aerial controls, public awareness, emergency preparedness with communities. Put a big strong focus on that over the last few years. And something that's not really listed in the slide here, we do have a pretty substantial control center out of Calgary, which monitors our system in BC, which monitors really thousands and thousands of points of on continuous basis. Those are pressure, flow meters. They can shut valves if needed. If there's there's alarms at the stations, which they monitor, and there's someone there all the time in our Calgary control center there. So we've really done a lot in that function to make sure the information we're seeing the last few years is pertinent information and not alarms, and really went through a full system walkthrough of all the different points there. So we've done quite a bit of work in the control center, which is another safety barrier for our system, right? That if we see something going wrong, we have the real-time data there that we can react to it, right? Next slide is our integrity program. So really in our, I'll say firsthand because it's part of my role with the pipeline system, is we've put a real strong focus on integrity over the last really 4 years, and really leading the industry in the integrity front. So really something we're really ramped up was our inline inspection tools, which you might hear are smart tools, or in the industry, PIG tools, pipeline inspection gauges. But we've really ramped up our program. I know from 5-6 years ago, we'd run 4 or 5 tools a year and sort of rotate the assets around. Over the last 2 or 3 years, and even into this year, we're running 23 inline inspection tools in our system, just in T-North alone, which is from Chatwin to Fort Nelson. So we've really seen an upgrade in the technology in those tools and getting real good data, which allows us to look at anomalies on our system. And really what it leads to is integrity dig programs. So we'll get anomalies that those tools pick out. We'll dig those light areas up in our line segments and inspect them, right? And really change our way of thinking with integrity, and not waiting, and be a little more conservative and digging those up before something happens, right? So it could be corrosion, loss of coating, dents, that type of stuff. So our inline tools have been really accurate lately, and like I said, we spent a lot of money and really leading the industry on taking a real strong approach on the integrity system, which really bodes well and keeps our segments safe and reliable for our producers and customers that come on there. Just high level. So in our integrity dig program in what we call the Transmission North area, we're doing 17 sites between the Boundary Lake segments and the Dawson Creek area. Fort Nelson Mainline, we're doing a few sites up in those areas there. We're also put another strong focus on our cathodic protection. So this is something that counteracts the corrosion on our line segments. So we've really put a lot of focus on there and really ramped up that whole program as well. So put a lot of focus on integrity. And again, we're really leading the industry, and we've got some companies that are sort of following suit now. So we've sort of kicked that off 4 years ago. So it's kind of nice to be a part of that and really being ahead of things, right? So. That's it for me, Jessica.
So now on to our economic impact and corporate citizenship piece. So we just got our data in actually for 2022. And Enbridge's workforce for our BC team is 206 permanent and temporary employees. And we've paid out more than 20.3 million in total wages to those employees. That's pretty substantial contribution to the provincial economy. Our tax and economic benefits to the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality, we have it 2,056,075 for the 2022 tax season. As well, Enbridge paid 67.2 million in property taxes across BC for energy projects, pipelines, and our related facilities. Our capital expenditures in BC on items such as steel pipe equipment purchases and replacement, system integrity related investments, and capital leases totaled 341.7 million for 2022. And I thought as well, there'd be some value in focusing in a little bit more locally as well. We were proud to be a part of supporting the Canada Day Hand Games event as well with the Fort Nelson Hand Games Society. So we stay pretty plugged in with their events and really try to support the hand games. It's crucial for us to help support cultural renewal opportunities for Indigenous youth and create those cross-cultural opportunities as well. So glad to be a part of that. As well, this winter, we participated in the winter boot program, which has occurred in previous years as well in the area. This year we focused on outfitting the school in Fort Liard. And then this next year we'll be focusing on Fort Nelson. So we also supported the Fort Nelson First Nations annual celebration. So we partnered with North River this year and served over 400 meals, which was done through the Meat Doctor out of Dawson Creek. They were really happy to be a part of a community event and really made it work. So we were able to provide a really great meal to everyone. In 2022, through our Fueling Futures program, Enbridge invested $466,000 in community strengthening initiatives across BC. And we've supported numerous non-for-profit agencies across the province. And they're generally aligned in the three focus areas of health and safety, environment, and community. And then as well, through our Safe Community and First Responder program, Enbridge has donated more than $1.1 million to 86 different Canadian emergency responder organizations near our projects and operations. And on our next slide here, I only brought one copy, unfortunately. I have more on order. But in 2022, Enbridge released our Indigenous Reconciliation Action Plan. So in short, I'll call it the IRAP. But it does continue our long-held commitments to strengthening our relationships with Indigenous communities and advancing reconciliation in general. Within this IRAP, we have 22 commitments, and these commitments are actually tracked. So we report on them. I think it's every second year. We report out on our progress on meeting these goals, and it's a bit of a living document that we'll be kind of updated and enhanced over time as we get more valuable input from the communities. There's 6 pillars associated with our IRAP. So people, employment and education, economic inclusion and partnerships, environmental stewardship and safety, sustainability reporting and energy transition, as well as governance and leadership. So I can just pass this around and you guys can have a look at it. It's really beautiful document. There's really great art throughout it as well. And it really kind of gets into a bit more detail about the purpose of this document. So I'll leave that here. Maybe you can circulate it after lunch or during lunch. So now I'll hand it over to Jen and she can go over some of our BC pipeline system project for 2023.
Yeah, so kind of, I had to have this explained to me what an open season is. So basically Enbridge went out to all their customers and kind of put it out there and saying, does anybody need more capacity in our pipeline for their projects? So they did that with a project called Sunrise Expansion Program. So that will go from in the Pine Pass at our compressor station 2B down to the Huntington-Sumas border, right to the border of the states. And so through that, they decided that it was determined that they needed more capacity, these different companies. So looking to create capacity through both looping projects. So these will be 42-inch pipeline loops throughout. And it's your guys is probably bigger than mine, but you can see in the green, that's kind of where the looping would go. And then there's also on this project proposed 4 new compressor stations. So starting in the Pine Pass, heading all the way down to the border, it's going to increase capacity by 300 million cubic feet per day. Right now, they're kind of working through, so something that's kind of interesting and a bit challenging is there's also, so there's all of the communities, obviously it covers half of the province, but so through that, there's also 50 plus Indigenous groups that we kind of either pass through their traditional territories or their reserve lands. So working on them right now with some field programs and traditional use studies, gathering information, kind of feed into our environmental assessment process, and hoping to apply to the Canadian energy regulator in mid-2024. So lots of work needs to be done before that. So that's where that project's at. I don't have a ton of information on it. They're just, like I said, doing the initial work on it. But it's planning to go, and it would be in service, I think, in 2028. Yes, late 2028, once it's all said and done. So that's a Sunrise Expansion Program. So that would be what is T South. So T North that Jason was talking about earlier, where we're doing all the integrity work, is we also have the Aspen Point Program. So same idea, looking to increase capacity, and that would increase actually, it would go to 535 million cubic feet a day, additional, 535, yeah. So it's a big project as well. It will only have 15 kilometers of loops, and those kind of happen like cut by our CSN4 is kind of as north as it's going to get. And then we've got some stuff going into Alberta as well, kind of creating capacity from the Gordondale area. So that's also underway, kind of the same timing on it, working with all of the groups in the area, the municipal governments and such, just to kind of get feedback on it, and also looking to apply in 2024 for that. This one, I know a little bit more about this kind of T North, and what's kind of great about this one is we're looking to, so it talks about like additional compression as well. I think there's 3 additional compressors, and looking to electrify all of those. So talking about ESG goals and decreasing emissions, looking to kind of do that through electrifying these compressor sites. There's some timelines. You guys will have this in your handouts, and then I can speak a little bit to our LNG projects. So the West Coast Connector line, so that's one that would go from our compressor station 2 out to Prince Rupert. It's set up out on the west to have additional facilities that could feed. Right now, it's proposed for 2 48-inch lines. It's very much in still. We received our environmental assessment certificate in 2014. And we've received an extension on that, so to take us to 2024. So it was a 5-year certificate. We had 5-year extension. So now we've applied to get another extension on this project. Just there was a lot of things that kind of came up. At one point, it just didn't seem feasible. And then when we decided we wanted to go for it, then it was COVID, and there was just a lot of kind of barriers in the way. So right now we're looking to get a special extension. So that requires ministerial, it has to change legislation basically. So we have to get a special exception for that, and then looking to get that certificate. But right now we don't have a commercial partner, so it's basically a pipeline to nowhere at the moment, but looking to see if we can kind of get some different groups on board for that. So yeah, that one's out to Prince Rupert, and then I'll quickly touch on our Pacific Trail Pipelines project. So this one we purchased from Chevron and Woodside Petroleum in 2021. It's unique in that, so with the WCGT project, we have a certificate, but we don't have the permits. It all has to go through the BC Energy Regulator already still. This one already has those permits. So the Pacific Trail Pipelines has the certificate as well as the pipeline permits, and they've actually cleared over 100 kilometers of the actual route. So it's a little bit farther along, but with that said, it also does not have commercial partners. So when we purchased the pipeline, we didn't purchase the facility. So it's again, a pipeline to nowhere, unfortunately. But this one, what we do right now is we just update our permits annually. We have a group of people that work out there, and they control erosion and just make sure the pipeline is, what's been cleared is in good state, like with weed management, erosion. But so looking like ideally one of these two projects, we would love to see something happen one day with them, but kind of on hold right now. We did, and something else that's not in here is we did purchase a 30% stake in the wood fiber LNG project that's in
Squamish.
thank you. Yes, it's Squamish. So that's kind of, that looks like they're going to start construction on that this year, which is exciting. I think that's kind of it for projects. Of course, we'd love to answer any questions you guys have. I might have jumped over everything.
I
really
had a
quickly.
few more projects too, just happening in the T North area. We don't have slides included for them. But Jason mentioned the geohazard initiative, and I think like you're all probably aware of the moving hills in this area. And so we have placed a lot of emphasis on really understanding how those slopes are moving, and how to best protect the integrity of our pipeline. So as part of that, we do have some HDDs south of Trutch planned for the next few years. So one of them being Trutch Creek itself. So working right now on the regulatory process for that. It'll be a small HDD just paralleling the existing crossing. And then we have a larger HDD there in South Taylor. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that project, Jason.
Yeah, so the, and that's in line with those inspection tools we run. We've noticed some strain on some of our pipeline there. So we've made the decision to be real conservative and run the HDDs, the horizontal directional drills, and really dig up those pipes and take the stress off it, and redo those lines way deep into the ground. So there's no concern from the stress on these hills, right? So we've, like Jessica said, we've got quite a few projects on the go, and really, trying to lead the industry of just before something happens, let's fix it and move along, right? So, but yeah, it's we're also doing some work on the Sickany Hill as well. We did some repair work there a few years ago, but we have some other work on the other side. So that's right in the Sickany Valley. So it's a pretty substantial work there on a pretty steep slope and remote area as well. So really took a big focus on our geotechnical work here.
Is that pipe in the Sickany on the ground, or is it buried still?
It's buried. It's above ground up top.
Yeah. Okay.
But it is buried.
through the valley of the Barrie.
And then we also have a few pipeline abandonment projects actually from the North River era. So we've got one, you might have heard of it, the Shakili pipeline abandonment project. So that's over by Crotcho Lake area and runs over into Alberta. So we abandoned that pipeline last year. And then this year they've been going out. We worked with Echo Dene on doing the caribou habitat restoration planning. So Fort Nelson First Nation Lands actually participated in developing our CHIRP, they call it. They get submitted to the regulator for approval. And then we had Echo out there conducting the work. They just wrapped up, I think, last week. So it'll be really interesting to watch what happens there over time as that land regenerates. And then as well, we have another pipeline abandonment project that crosses over the border. I think only like 4 kilometers of the pipeline are in BC. And then it crosses into the Yukon and then into the Northwest Territories, just northwest of Fort Liard. And it's approximately a 55-kilometer pipeline segment that we'd like to abandon. It's already decommissioned. So we're just working through the regulatory process on that. We were hoping to start construction on it this last winter, but we've just been experiencing some regulatory delays. So we're just working really closely with the nations, the local communities there on getting that project off the ground. We're working on an amendment right now to the application. And then there is a CER hearing process actually triggered as part of that. So we'll see where that ends up here later in the fall, and then we'll proceed with the regulatory process to decision and be able to go up and do that restoration reclamation work up there as well.
Is that the Pointed Mountain line?
Yeah. So I think that covers most of our project. We have a lot going on.
Yeah, we do.
Sorry, it was maybe a bit of an information overload. We're used to hearing it all the time, but it's nice to be able to get up here and actually share kind of, what's going on at Enbridge. Lots happening in T North and lots happening in T South as well. So we're always here. We're here if you have questions. You know, if there's any opportunities to work with the regional municipality on programs that benefit Fort Nelson as well, we're always open to hearing those ideas. So please reach out to me, and we'll make sure to come visit more often. Now that COVID's over, it's nice we're able to get together. So.
All right. Does anybody have any questions? All right, well, I got a couple. Are you doing anything with respect to the whole hydrogen in the hydrogen world? Are you looking at mixing? Are you looking at taking them on? Are you looking at transporting it? Are you getting involved with the whole hydrogen thing at all? And are you going to have to do anything to your lines to do that?
Not that I know of.
Right.
There
'Cause
is-
you
I
can-
could- Yeah, we're partnered with P&G and Fortis on a government application to investigate it
Yeah.
in BC. So that is, we're trying, but something else we're doing is, so Enbridge in Ontario is actually like the P&G, like they actually gas the
Distribute,
homes.
yeah.
Yeah, and so they're blending hydrogen in those lines. I don't know anything about it. I'm not a technical person, but apparently it's preferred to transport. So in
Yeah.
a scenario like that, it's really convenient when it's like really short, like gas to homes.
Yeah.
But when you try and transport it like from here to the border,
Sumac,
it's challenging.
In its pure form, but you can mix it up to 10 or 20%.
Yeah, and then there's the challenge too. That's what they're finding in Ontario is it's a balance that because if it's too much hydrogen, then you have to go in and change out all your appliances
Yeah.
and all of the things in your home to actually manage it. So I think that's kind of what studies they're doing.
Good. I had a question about the Shakili line, but you answered that.
Okay.
Thank you. You're abandoning that and
Yeah.
pretty much, well, yeah, taking it. So you talk about net zero emissions by 2050, and what sort of technologies are you using to sort of get there? What's your plan? What are you doing that?
Yeah, so I mean, part of that is our renewables portfolio. And then we also have our electric drive compressors and our modernization plans as well for our compressor stations. We have 19 compressors across the province, so there's a lot of modernization that can occur at those locations. And then as well, it's sometimes like the small things that add up too. So there's a lot of instrumentation that we can update and modify. And then as well, our blowdowns as well. Instead of releases, we can pump that down. So there's lots of different ways in which we can look at achieving those targets. And it's just, yeah, constantly taking steps to make sure that we're getting there and tracking our progress along the way as well.
Right. So are you doing site emission surveys? So are you flying, are you flying with some of this new technology that they've got that can, that can measure down to molecules, it seems, of the gas that are leaking or, being emitted from your sites? Are you doing any of that sort of work?
Yeah, we are actually starting that in 2023 here. So
Yeah.
we are putting a strong focus on leakage surveys, what we call it.
Yeah.
And atmospheric inspection. So that's really going to all our sites above ground and doing a leakage survey. So it's going to take a few years to hit all our sites. There's many sites, remote sites. We're putting a strong focus on that, right? And also looking at some opportunities with the area patrols as well, right? So thermal.
Yeah.
It's part of the leakage survey as well. So that'll identify
Right.
And some of the things we're looking at, like not even too far in the past, we used to take a line segment down to do repairs. We'd vent that off. We just don't do that anymore. Jessica mentioned, we're pumping that back into the system and reusing that gas right now, just blowing it out to atmosphere. So
yeah,
the industry has really changed on that front. We're also looking at some of our valving where we operate those valves and fuel gas from the line and it will vent off once it closes or shut. We're looking at new technology which closes that loop and doesn't vent that off. So there's new technologies coming, and we're always looking for those opportunities to cut those emissions down, right? It's part of our goals, right?
Yeah. So electrification and closed loop venting is essentially what that's and then you're doing the renewables. So it's not like you'll get to zero. You're kind of doing some trading there with respect to bringing renewables on, which helps you to offset some of the gas that does happen to come out from your system. Okay, good. Did I hear your integrity dates? I wanted to talk about that a little bit and the frequency of internal, like how many tool runs? What's your frequency of tool runs?
Like I mentioned earlier, we used to run each line every 5 years. We've really running them. I know in the T North area almost once a year now, right? So there's a couple things with the new technology and the tools. It not only identifies anomalies, corrosion, but strain on our line segments, right? So we're focusing on those hills that I mentioned earlier, the geotechnical side. So they've really got it down packed where we can see the strain that are on those hills, and we can react to them before we have an issue there, right? Slide, really being conservative there and just getting rid of the pipe buried on the hills and just using the HCD thought process to put it down, 100 meters deep, 60 meters deep under those hills, which really eliminates the risk there of strain on a pipeline.
Did I hear you say you were looking at 17 digs on T North and 3 on the Fort Nelson line? Did I hear you say that?
Well, it's all T North, but we got 17 digs. We got one on our Alberta line, one of our Dawson leg that feeds actually the town of Dawson fuel gas. We have an 8-inch line there. We have 8 digs on that one. Our boundary line, which is basically east of McMahon Platte. We have 8 digs on that one. And we have a few up in the N3 line, which is just south of property.
Okay.
Some digs in that area as well.
Yeah, and I guess the reason I'm asking that, how many digs are you doing, and what the frequency of are you seeing degradation or corrosion? I guess if you've increased the frequency of tool runs, are you still seeing the numbers of corrosion or damage to the line that you need to do repairs after you do a dig, which tells us, right, over time that it's deteriorating more quickly, right? So you've increased from 5 to 1, probably because the industry's done that after some of the incidents that have happened. But if you continue every year to start seeing integrity dig or anomalies that require you to do a dig, it means that there should be some concern with the line, right? So that's my question with respect to that.
Yeah, we've actually seen a decrease in our digs, actually, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Like, we ran tools on this Fort Nelson main line, so south of Fort Nelson to the N2 station. And we had no digs come back on that one.
Good.
So quite a few of these segments are no digs. The ones that we mentioned on the Dawson area and the boundary, those are tools that we ran 3 years ago. We're just sort of catching up. They were low priority. They weren't, they're just more of a check and balance there. And just to verify the tool data as well. So those ones are a little bit behind, but yeah, we're seeing the frequency go down actually, which is a good thing, right? And when we do go dig, it's we're finding like the coding is missing. But it kind of goes hand in hand with our integrity program with the cathodic side of things, or cathodic protection.
Mm-hmm.
So we really ramped up that side of things as well. So if we have a good cathodic protection system, which helps the corrosion of the pipelines, if we have a good system there, it eliminates any of that stuff happening, right? So kind of a two-stage thought process there, but again, I think we're really leading the industry and showing the data that we're providing, and so it's helping make our lines more reliable, safe, everything that goes along with that, right?
Good. This is my last question. Yeah, I think it is. The Aspen Point program. So I'm looking at the map, and you guys know me. I'm always concerned about the direction of flow of gas. So with Aspen Point, I see that you're going into the Gordondale. So is that gas coming to BC or from BC? Particularly in the Gordondale. Like, is that a Gordondale collection lines that then you're putting in the main line and bringing it to BC?
No, actually, but the Aspen Points, it's hard to see on this map.
Yeah.
It's actually going into our Sunset station.
Okay.
Which is where the Coastal GasLink plant is, right? So we have a connector from our Sunset station to the Coastal GasLink.
Yeah.
So essentially, our loops will tie into that station there. So not the Gordondale line; it's actually into the Sunset station.
Right.
So we'll and there's some key areas along the Fort Nelson main line as well. That's where some of the Montney play is where we're adding some loops as well. And it'll basically come down to Station 2, which is the Chetwynd, and come back up to Sunset Station and into the Coastal GasLink. So it's another option for those customers to bring their gas to market there.
Yeah, I'd like to see a little blown up version of that Gordondale and the looping coming into your Sunset, and of course the concern has always been is that communities in the north have always supported the LNG projects in BC, as long as the gas is coming from BC, and particularly from here. I mean, we're not selling our gas, as much as we'd like to be selling. The opportunities that we have, we're sitting on the largest plays in the world, and the investment here is pretty low. So as soon as you start seeing mainline integration with pipelines in Alberta, we know that gas can flow both directions in those lines, right? Sometimes all it takes is a swinging of a valve or a check valve or something, and all of a sudden gas can be flowing and competing. So all of a sudden Alberta gas is competing with the BC gas, and then ours is not getting used. So that's many of the communities have been concerned about that over the years. And so whenever we see a presentation with a new project, it sort of links all that together, and there's a little bit of a map there, but
no,
it'd be nice to see what the flow diagrams look like.
Yeah, we can give you a more detailed map for sure.
Yeah.
And something else with the Aspen Point, we are building another compressor station, which is we call it Station 1B. So Station 1 is in Taylor. You know Rob, and we're gonna go on the other side of the river this time. On top of the hill there, we're gonna build another station there. Essentially, that'll feed gas down to our Sunset Station on the Fort St. John Main,
Right.
into that coastal gas lanes.
Okay.
So
Good.
there's no more room in Taylor.
No, there's not much room now. All right. I think that was it. Oh, are you partnering at all with the Cedar LNG? Have you been talking to them at all, or
There's talk.
there's talk? Okay,
It's definitely an option.
yeah. So that's good enough. I mean, you're talking to them. That's. I mean, it's early. I get it, and yeah. Okay. Good.
There's some new opportunities, there's this Elizabeth's project out there as well. So yeah, there's lots happening.
Good. Those are all the questions I had. Did anybody have any when we were talking about this stuff? No?
I'm curious about the mothballed plant that lives just to the east of us here. Do you still own that?
I don't think we do we? No? But North River?
I'm really not sure.
No.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually matter.
Yeah.
If we do, we don't have nothing. on our team.
Yeah. There's a consortium of companies that own it. You actually have a line coming from it. At least the signs are on it that say it's yours, but they've never put a bit of gas through it. Right? Never put a bit of gas.
So
through it.
unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Goes right through my trap line. That's why I know.
I bring it up because I always want to know what lesson we can learn from things like that. But
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming in. I'm looking forward to having some lunch and maybe some informal discussions. And yeah, I appreciate any time, any of our companies and businesses, industries come in and talk to us about the plans and the different things. And this is the first opportunity since maybe since COVID, but certainly since the election. So thank you very much for traveling up here and sitting with us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thanks for everyone's time here. I know everyone's busy and appreciate the time here for us to present.
Good. All right. Let's adjourn this meeting then.